Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Pat's Creative Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest joining me, none other than, is it the Cartoon Gamer or just Cartoon Gamer 800?
Either or, 8,000, but I
8,000,
just go by. That's okay. I just go by the Cartoon Gamer or Cartoon Gamer. Either one is fine.
Gotcha. Well, either way, you're here now. Would you care to introduce yourself to everybody out there?
Sure, why not? My name is Malik. I go online by the Cartoon Gamer. I make videos, I do voiceover, I do art, and all that creative stuff. And I've been doing that for quite a while now. And yeah, I'm just another guy amidst a sea of people who do that kind of thing.
Well, aren't we all just another guy amidst a sea, right? But at the very least,
of course,
a guy is still a guy, and
yeah.
a person behind it, and thoughts and ideas, and plenty of creations to back it up, right? How I kind of discovered you was I've definitely seen your name around primarily from watching Did You Know Gaming quite a bit because you've done quite a few voiceovers for them, but also just from seeing some of your reviews, like a little bit more recent one, but the SpongeBob Rehydrated game. I was watching that one, and one of the things that always stands out, both in your works and when you appear on other people's, is that your narration is just impeccable. It's you somehow are able to very much control the tonality of your voice and able to articulate yourself with the proper words. And I always appreciate that because it's not something that's just easy to do, right? And even just
that's
things
very
like
kind.
yeah, well, you always manage to make your voice still interesting regardless of the sentence you're saying. And sometimes you watch videos where you can basically you notice when the narration is not up to par, and seeing as someone who goes even further than par and just a great level of narration, I have a mad appreciation for, especially because I do so many podcasts like this, and every time when I re-listen to it, I think, man, the tonality of my voice is so off or something like that, right? So hearing someone do it well is always appreciative. And I think that might be just a good place to start, which is just what you obviously carry a large level of fascination for voice acting and narrating. Even if you're not voice acting in the character kind of sense, you're still pronouncing, right? You're still articulating into a microphone. How long have you been interested in that style of creating, basically? Like, how long have you been interested in narration specifically?
Well, let's see. So, like, you might not believe it, but I was always a really shy kid. Like, I recently just did I talked to an old teacher of mine from middle school, and I showed all the kids in the class one of my videos and talked about just the content that I make. And my teacher, she was like, "Oh, I remember when you were always in like the back of the corner of the room of the school, just toiling away at your drawings and just keeping to yourself." And honestly, that's kind of how I am today. But when I'm behind a microphone, I'm able to just articulate and just I'm like a completely different person, or rather the person that I feel like on the inside, and just let that person out. But yeah, narration has always been something like, I guess it just goes back to like voiceover. And again, I was always really shy, but I always like recited things that I saw on television, or I would memorize promos and commercials, infomercials, and things like that. I had I had Sound Recorder on my old computer back in when I was 5 years old, circa 2000, and I would just, at a really crappy desktop microphone, and I would just say whatever was in my head, and it had like a 3-minute limit on what you could say, and I would just garble and just talk whatever I could think about at that moment in time. So I guess that's where it started, and yeah.
Well, then I kind of had something similar where I'm still relatively, it's hard to say shy, but I guess just more withholding, a little bit less social in most public situations. But what I definitely found was before I started recording anything on YouTube or just recording anything offline as well, that I was particularly worse at holding up conversations with other people. And I'm curious if you found that your interest in narrating, if that has helped you in social situations as well. Like, do you find that because you can articulate yourself so well on a microphone now, that you're almost better at articulating yourself in social situations in addition to that?
it depends. Like sometimes if I have like it depends on if the conversation that I'm having with somebody is like something I'm interested in.
Sure.
Like if I can like if we're talking about like a video game or animation or something like that, I can go on and it's really hard to shut me up sometimes, and I know it, everybody else knows it. But when it comes to things, I don't know, maybe something more political or something that's very heavy-handed or has related in controversial things and things like that, I'm usually pretty quiet and I don't really speak up unless I have something to say. And even then, it's just like, oh yeah, this is how I feel about this, but I really don't want to get further into that. So I can hold a conversation, but I would say that narration did help me be a lot more social. But yeah, again, it depends.
And do you find that your conversations are typically more interest-based in general as opposed to kind of just personality-based? Like, how much of your conversation revolves around things that you're interested in versus just, I guess, how you say short-term conversation or talking about feelings or other people's feelings or things like that? Like, what's the balance there, do you think, in your typical day-to-day?
I'd say it's 50-50 when it comes to interest-related conversations versus just like day-to-day things like how you doing, how's your day at work, or how's this going with this person. But yeah, again, for more interest-based stuff, I guess it just comes a lot more naturally to me.
Right. Yeah. Well,
more comfortable.
I find that interesting because it's definitely doing the act of recording and finding out how to articulate myself on specific interests over the internet. Really then transferred over to helping me just find out how to articulate myself in a more personal sense to those around me. So I was kind of I'm kind of thankful for that, right? The fact that it's kind of helped both hands. But while we're on the topic of narration, I was also curious, and this is something I talk to a lot of my guests about. But because you do a lot of scripted work, but also unscripted work, do you find it easier to get your point across when you have a script that you're narrating, or do you find it easier to basically talk more freeform like this? Like, which way do you think you can articulate yourself better, if there's any difference at all?
Again, well, let's see. Maybe this would have helped if I did have a script. Like, I think I do a little better with a script, but yeah, like, because I do a lot of I try to improvise a bit when I don't have a script, or if I just want to go a little bit more freeform. But
right.
I really do like using scripts. I just like being creative with just thinking about like, oh, I would say this way, or I would say things that way. But yeah, there are a lot of times where I don't have a script and I can just think of like weird things like just off the top of my head that probably wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Right. There's like an underlying level of magic that's hard to tap into when you do use a script, even if you do articulate yourself perfectly fine with a script, right? There's like this certain sense of just wit or something like that it's hard to translate that into such a post-written form. But so what about when you're narrating other people's work? Like, let's say when you're doing voiceovers for Did You Know Gaming, do you find that like using someone else's words and then speaking it, is that still something that you feel almost like attached enough? Do you feel like you're articulating properly when you're using someone else's words, if that makes any sense? Because sometimes when I read other people's stuff out loud, it feels like I know what this is supposed to mean, but I'm more conscious about what I'm saying and not the content of what's being said, right? Right. Or you could take this anywhere you want. I guess I'm making it more complicated than it needs to be, but just how does narrating for other people differ from narrating for yourself, basically?
Well, for Did You Know Gaming, that's the funny thing, because for every video that I have narrated on Did You Know Gaming, I also wrote, researched, and pretty much everything else. I mean, I did get outside help from Shane, and he does like the final, like he just looks over everything and makes sure it's like, okay, that's good, or maybe make some changes here. But yeah, the stuff that I have the stuff that I have narrated has pretty much 90% been my own stuff. But in terms of like, I did like a collaboration with somebody, and their writing style was different to mine, but they did a thing where it's like, does this sound natural to you? If this doesn't sound like something that you would say, you're free to improvise a little bit to make it sound like something that you would say. But I guess is it doesn't feel too weird because I mean, as an actor, I mean you're bound to just listen. Hold. You see, I know what I'm trying to say, but
no, I think I understand what you're saying. It's like you're bound to the form of which you speak anyway, so you're already prone to just focusing in on how you sound as opposed to what you're actually saying.
Yeah, that sounds much better than what I was trying to articulate.
Right. So, I wasn't aware that you were also doing a lot of the research for those videos you did with Did You Know Gaming. Is researching something you enjoy? Like, do you like picking apart things of history and bringing it to the forefront, or do you find that just to be a necessary hindrance to get your thoughts out there?
Oh no, I love it because my family will be able to tell you that whenever I looked up stuff on like Wikipedia or in the case of Pokemon, like Bulbapedia, when I found interesting things about like Pokemon or something from a nature documentary, I'd be like, hey guys, did you know about this and this and this and this? And I just go on and on about this kind of stuff. So when I do research and then I find something that really interests me, I always go like, wow, I can't wait to share this with like everybody else who doesn't know about this. This is going to be so cool. So I really like researching things and then finding out about stuff. And then I always try to look for like the most interesting stories and then try and reword it and then just put it into the video in like a really interesting way. So I love research.
Right. Does it almost feel like collaborative to you because you're finding source material out there and then finding a way to present it? Because like I kind of picture it as almost a two-man job essentially, right? Of the person presenting the facts, and you're like, okay, how do I put this in a digestible format in the form of video, right? Like, do you get a sense of almost cooperation with researchers when you do that, or do you think it's mostly just an exercise of being able to translate history into meaning, basically?
So when it comes to collaborating with other researchers, I don't. Well, actually, I think I did do that for like we did a Did You Know Gaming on canceled Game Boy Advance games where me and Shane basically put the video together. I found like I researched 60 games and did all the research for that, and then Shane did the other ones. But yeah, I guess it's kind of cool how we collaborate that way and then try to find a fun way to put it all together, because sometimes like for that video I did my things and then Shane put them into like various genres. It's like this game goes here and then this game goes there, so it was interesting to see where my stuff would line up with his stuff, and the various writing styles not clash, because clash kind of sounds bad, but it's like, okay, so here's what this sounds like and then this is what this sounds like. Right. And when I do, like, I have a lot of creative freedom when it comes to researching, so I'll try and make like a sly pun or a dumb joke to like lead into a certain game for like a cool transition or something funny and memorable. And I always try to say, it's like, hey, did you know who wrote this bit? Can you tell? Something like that.
So not necessarily clashing, but almost weaving together to find the best of both styles, basically. That's what.
Yeah, somehow it works.
Yeah, well, it works out great. I mean, the videos always turn out well. And, you know, I don't mean to stay on narration forever, but I did kind of have another question I wanted to ask. And that's that I don't mean to phrase this question as why you don't typically use camera work in your videos, but instead more, have you found that not using camera work almost benefits the strength of your narration, either because you don't have to worry about things like looking at a camera, or because people are now focusing more on what you're saying as opposed to everything else that's visually happening? Have you found any like positives to not using a camera in your narration?
Well, one of the first positives is that I don't have to do up my hair, so that's pretty nice.
That's got to be the highest of the positives right there. I hate doing
absolutely
hair.
And I mean, my hair is pretty short, so, but still, I mean, I grew out once when I was like 10 years ago, and it looked really cool, but hair is a pain to keep, just to maintain. I was like, just cut it all off. But Oh, sorry.
I was making a dumb joke. I was just gonna say I wish that when we were born, we would get a form and there'd be a checkbox on it and says, "Would you like to keep one hairstyle for the rest of your life so you never have to maintain it?" I would check that instantly. I'd be like, "Yes, I don't care what hairstyle it is. I just don't want to mess with it anymore." Anyway, sorry, just dumb joke. Continue.
No, that's okay. No, I do the same thing too. But yeah, I feel like what you said sounds really good, but for me, narration, the reason I don't show my face is I just like the privacy of just keeping my face separate from everything. And like everyone is online nowadays, I want to try and keep that separate from my online personality, even though my online personality is pretty much just me. But
sure.
I'd like it so that my face isn't plastered everywhere. And then it's really cool on the off chance that I go somewhere and somebody recognizes my voice and then they're like, "Wait, that was you? I didn't put two. I never would have thought that voice came out of so and so or something like that."
And that kind of connects to just the fascination with voice actors in general, right? Because so many times you'll see what the actual voice actor looks like, and you're like, "Oh, that's crazy." So you almost find it more exciting, in a sense, to not show your face.
Yeah, a little bit, where it's like, they have no idea what I look like, and not a lot of people ask. It's like, "Hey, can you show us your face?" But it's always, I always wonder if people think it's like, what does this guy look like? But I'm happy to say that no one has like gone out of their way to try and plaster my face somewhere.
Sure. Well, and I've heard some creators say that it would kind of ruin the magic too, right? Of to not have your imagination wonder as to what it kind of looks like. It almost adds a second level of interest to the videos themselves, right?
Yeah.
But I just found that like I didn't always work with the webcam, and I used to do podcasts more audio driven, and it just felt like a whole nother ballpark when I had the camera set up in front of me, because if suddenly I'm worried about like, oh, the camera's looking at me, I got to make eye contact with the camera. What's eye contact if there's no eyes? I don't know. But then the guests are like on the actual screen and stuff, and I find that it sometimes at first was very much halting my speech, and I would get through things a lot less effectively. And I would always think like, maybe I should just cut out the cameras, because I feel like I can talk pretty normally without it. But eventually I think I got the hang of it, basically. So that's kind of why I asked, just because I find that narration without a camera almost strengthens what I say. And also it's just a matter of what people end up focusing on, right?
Yeah.
You're mentioning the hair thing. What if I come in with really, really bad hair, right? Even that, though that's my prerogative, and nobody really actually cares that I have bad hair, that's still just going to be more information that they are processing as they're watching, and could inadvertently take attention away from what I'm actually saying. So it kind of becomes like this strange issue of like, okay, if I'm going to do camera, I have to do good camera etiquette, and it's all just adds way too much into what I'm thinking about when I'm just trying to speak words, right? The whole point of the podcast is to speak words. But that's a mini tangent. I just wanted to kind of explain where that came from. Is there anything else you wanted to mention about all this other narration stuff before we move on, or?
Well, I was just gonna say that I was thinking about like showing my face when I first started off, but I didn't have any really good webcam, so I just staved off of it for the time. But then after a while, I was like, you know what? This is less stressful than just trying to find a good quality camera,
right,
and putting my face out there, and then looking back at old videos like, man, this is what I looked like back then, or it's like, oh man, this lighting is terrible, or blah blah blah. So that's just one thing personally for me that I just don't have to worry about. And like you said, it makes things, just makes people focus more on the narration. It's not taken away from stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I do think I think there's something to be said about the point you're making about voice acting, how it's like there is that level of excitement of not understanding the face behind it. And your channel does carry a very like exciting tone with it, right? Just through different narrations that you do, and the way you have your own character, which the audience can see. I can't actually see the character right now, but the audience can see that you actually have a character. And I guess that might be kind of an interesting question. Where does this character come from? Like, what's your history with making original characters and personifying them, basically? Like, how did you kind of get involved with that, basically?
Okay, so in the case of my profile picture, it basically started out with... so there was a Pokemon episode where the main character, Ash Ketchum, gets turned into a Pikachu at the end of an episode because of some girl that's like using magic, and everyone thought that was really cool. It was called Ashichu, and then by the beginning of the next episode, Ash got turned back into a regular human being by the end. But that was my first profile picture, just Pikachu mixed with Ash and Ash's hat. And then after a while, I kind of tried to personify it a bit more. It was still an Ashichu looking character. And then after a while, I kind of, I changed up his clothing to make it so that he looked more like Gold from Pokemon Gold and Silver, which I actually have a cosplay of, so that was also kind of an inspiration. And then, yeah, I just modified it a bit more to make it look more like a stylized Pikachu character. And that's basically where that came from. But I've been making characters for years.
And so you don't really necessarily, like, you wouldn't consider the character of your profile picture necessarily an original character, like that's not the definitive like artist rendition of yourself, basically.
No, that's still a Pikachu, but it's a very stylized Pikachu.
Sure.
That's what I would say.
Gotcha. And do you make, like, do you still make characters often today? Do you find, like, do you do commissions at all? Like, to what extent do you do digital art today?
Oh, I still do a heck of a lot of art. Like, I'm crazy about characters. Like, one of the things that I want to do is I want to make my own animated series someday. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but everybody has their own way of going about it, and I'm going to find my own way to do so. Like, I was just thinking about it the other day. I was just drawing up some new characters, like these biker chick characters that I just thought, wouldn't it be cool if these guys were like part of a gang? And I just started drawing stuff, and I'm still finalizing some designs, and it's like, oh, I want to add one more. I want to add like a big one. I want to add like a skinny one. I want to add like the leader that's really tough, and I want to see like inspirations. What would they sound like? What characters am I really liking in like media right now? But yeah, I've been making characters my entire first, maybe in terms of like original stuff, I guess at least for the last 15, 16 years, but I like to think I've gotten pretty okay at it within the 2010s or so.
Right. And in this animated series idea, what role do you think you would play in that ideally? Like, would you just kind of oversee everything? Or are you interested enough in animation to animate it yourself? Would you want just the voice acting position or something like that, right? Like, to what extent do you think your role would be in this animated series?
Now, when I was younger and a lot more naive than I am today, I thought it's like, oh, I want to have control over everything. I want to make sure this is this and this is that, and I want to make sure I do this, and I want to make sure I have a hand in this pot and all that stuff. But I recognize now that animation is a collaborative effort alongside many other things, and I can't be in a million places at once, but realistically, I would want to be involved in like story, artwork, maybe boarding, and voiceover. Heck yeah, I would want to be like at least one of the main characters and do some background characters here, as many as I can do, and yeah, bring in some talent, of course. But yeah, I love voiceover, and yeah, I would. In terms of animation, I know that's more of a thing like overseas and things like that, but I would probably be the guy to be like, no, I want it to look like this. I want it to move like this. Or it's like, here's the kind of weight that I'm going for with like when this character slams into a wall, it needs to have this kind of weight to it. But what you're doing is like, just punch it up a little bit more. One of those director guys or producer guys. So I'd like to be heavily involved, but not everything.
Right. And you said even like narrative building and stuff, you'd be interested in that part. Like, do you have experience in or do you have interest in narrative building, basically?
So just like world building and stories and backstories and things like that.
Yeah, like because I guess I'm curious, like what part of this animated series that you're most attached to, basically. Like, would you say it's mostly the characters themselves, or it's the narrative with the characters, or it's the animation? Like, what do you think would be what's the biggest interest of that?
I guess for me it's sort of a mix of the characters and the world building, and the overall design. When it comes to backgrounds, I'm not terribly great at it, but I love like characters and like thinking of
Right.
what settings I could put them in and all these different backstories with them. It's like, okay, this character, she's probably from like a tough background, but she has like
Right.
a cute little teddy bear, and nobody but her closest friends really know about this, and anybody outside of that circle of friends will probably die, something like that.
Right.
But yeah, I just love thinking of new characters and just thinking of like just having conversations with people or hearing things on the radio or television. Those are great inspirations for like new characters and situations. And it's like, I like this personality trait, and I also like this personality trait. I'm going to see if I can adapt this to this character and then see what comes out of that. And then maybe this voice will work for them. I really like this
Right.
actor or something like that.
So kind of like just the connectivity between everything, finding ways to draw lines between, giving cause and effect to every detail that's added, both in design but also in just personality within the characters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. I mean, I've got next to zero experience with animated series and how they're all operated. I only took
That's
like
okay. Me too.
Okay. I only took a few. I took a few like 3D animated classes or whatnot, and I like learned through that. I was like, oh, I don't think animation is for me. It wasn't. It just wasn't much I guess articulation, which what I find myself more interested with, and I guess the gratification of doing a podcast and then hearing it over and having that kind of be it won me over a lot of time and effort they had to put into animation, right? Maybe I'm just trying to say I'm lazy. I don't know. But I have, because I took those classes, I have mad appreciation for those who are able to do it. And every time I have someone involved with animation on the show, I'm always fascinated, because it's a field that feels so untouchable to me, but is so, I recognize the work that goes into it. But we'll kind of change gears a little bit. A question I wanted to ask is that, you often, I don't, maybe you could help me with a timeline on this, but you've been interviewing voice actors on your channel, and I don't. For how long have you been doing that, for starters?
So I started that in 2018. I just wanted to do I have a series called Pokemonth where, yeah, I do Pokemon related videos every June, and I just decided to change things up a bit for 2018. It was like, wouldn't it be cool if I got to interview the original voice of Professor Oak from Pokemon? And then after that, I was like, I wonder if I could do it again with somebody else. And then that just kept going. And just most recently,
Right.
I just did one with another voice actor, David Will. So that's my fourth one consecutive, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is, and you're getting the guests are very interesting, the ones that you're bringing on. But this is also one of the first times where I've interviewed someone who also has a decent amount of experience with interviewing other guests. So I want to take advantage of that and ask you a question, which is just, what are some of these struggles and annoyances of interviewing people? Like, what has been some of the frustrating parts of interviewing? And I'm not just asking because I need to sympathize with someone who understands. And I'm also asking just because I'm genuinely interested. Like, what are some of the struggles of interviewing people, basically?
Well, I guess one, because I've never really had too many issues personally, but maybe scheduling is probably the biggest one, where it's like, usually I'm pretty open for whatever, but I think I always get jitters when I ask somebody. It's like, hey, I got this thing, and would you like to be a part of it?
Yeah.
And then when the date gets closer and closer, it's like, oh man, I can't believe I'm actually getting to sit down and talk with this person.
Yeah.
And like when they reply, and it's like, oh man, I hope I find a good day where I can just sit down and chat with them. Hopefully nothing happens in between then, because there's another actor that I really want to talk to, but it keeps getting pushed back. They're still interested in doing it, but
Yeah.
I just sent them another message today, and it's like, well, I hope they get it. I hope they see it. I hope they reply, and I hope they're not bothered by me. I always say that. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, here I am again. Just hope I'm not bothering you. Just wondering if you'd still like to do an interview with me. But the last time I asked was like 4 months ago. But I don't want to be a pain, but at the same time, I also don't want to wait, because, anything can happen to
Yeah.
like this person could like just fall off the face of the planet, pass away or anything. But it's like, no, I don't want to wait, because yeah, anything could happen. And I'll
Yeah.
regret it for the rest of my life if something does happen. It's like, I should have asked sooner.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, so much of what you said just very much resonates. Just the thought of like, I want to make sure that we have this solidified, but also I do not want to bother you and make me be like, stop talking to me, you know? Like it's, there's always just that worry of like, you absolutely do not want to be a bother to somebody, but also, you have to message more in order to get things like worked out. There's one or two guests that I had on that almost didn't happen just because, you know, I interview a lot of artists, right? One thing that's relatively common with a lot of artists is that they're not always the most punctual, right? So I've had quite a few guests where it just almost didn't solidify just because there was no response for quite a while or something, and I ultimately had to keep like pestering them in order to get it to happen. Because at the end of the day, if they say they want to do it, that usually means they do want to do it. It's just like, it just hurts to sometimes send that extra email, be like, just send this one more time, just bumping this real quick,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I agree that I like the scheduling is probably the toughest part of the whole thing. I'm curious now, what are some of your highlights of it? Like, what do you think's been the best part of being able to interview these people? Is it talking to people you've been watching for a long time? Is it learning so many things from what they say? What do you think's the biggest part of it?
I think one of the coolest bits is, like you just mentioned, like just hearing their stories and then just learning more about who these guys are as just people, alongside the fact that, hey, when I was 6 years old, I was listening to you talk about this stuff on Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or whatever, and now I'm like 20-something years older, and I'm still doing that, but at the same time, I'm getting to know you on a more personal level. Like, when I spoke with Oliver Wyman, that was one of my favorite interviews that I've done so far, because we just diverted and just started talking about like Batman and Superman and our favorite video games. Like, the first thing that Ollie asked me before we started interviewing is like, I saw your channel and you love video games, dude. What are some of your favorite video games? And I'm like, oh my goodness, that is so cool. And then we just went on for like 2 hours about, like, if we weren't talking about his voiceover stuff and reminiscing about things, we were just chatting about like, what was your favorite DC movie that came out recently? Or it's like, what did you think about Batman Beyond? So I always tried to add a bit more of a personal side to the interviews, where it's like, oh, we can talk about this, but we can also talk about your other things and other interests and things like that. And just recently, like, Ollie was doing like a stream on Twitch, and I just wanted to pop in to say hello, and it's like, hey, it's Malik. It's like, oh my goodness, that is so cool. I'm hoping we can do another interview, because the mic quality wasn't too great, but I've gotten better at it now. But I'd love to do another interview with him and many other people in the future too.
Yeah. I there's some where when I had them on the show, it was super clear that it was like, oh, this is something that has to happen again. There's just sometimes there's that level of like, oh, we were just getting started, we got to do another show at some point. But I'm curious, to what extent do you usually prepare for your interviews? Like, what level of questions preparing do you have? Do you do any research? Like, how do you kind of go into interviewing someone?
So when it comes to interviewing someone, I always get like the basic stuff right off the bat. Like, I just write down what I can think of at the time, when it's like, how did you get started in voiceover? What was your role in this? Or what did you think about this role? Or just general things like that. If they were in a show or something that I really resonated with or really enjoyed, I always try to bring that up. I always try to think of like really obscure questions, and I know that not everyone might remember the stuff that they did, because they've done a lot and it's been a long time for a lot of these shows, but I always try to cover my bases. And maybe when I spoke to Mark Thompson, I talked about Ultimate Muscle, and I was like, I haven't seen Ultimate Muscle in quite some time, so I'm going to rewatch the first 3 episodes and refresh myself on this, and patch things up, maybe where things might not have, where Mark might have forgotten something, or another actor where it's like, oh, you played this character, do you remember this voice? And I tried to jog their memory on a couple of things, and I just try to do research in areas that interest me and I would think would interest them and the audience as a whole.
And
So yeah.
do you find that the like, because I will sometimes prepare like a whole bunch. I will write down like a ton of questions and have so much in the back of my brain, and then by the end of the podcast I will have only asked like 3 of those questions because the guest will bring up something that's far more interesting than what I was going to say, right? So then I kind of build off that. Like, does the podcast just ever go places you would not expect entirely? Like, do you find yourself with a surplus of plans or questions like afterwards, or?
Oh yeah, like I'll always have something planned, but then usually something will go in a direction I had no idea it was gonna go, or it might transition. Like a question I might have for later will get brought up like a lot earlier because this person said this about this, so it's like okay, I guess we're gonna talk about this now. Or
Right.
if it's just we're like I said when we talked with Oliver Wyman and we just started talking about like DC and stuff, I wasn't prepared for that.
Sure.
But I
I
was
wasn't
like,
in the script.
thank goodness. I know a couple of things about Batman and
Yeah.
video games and here and there, but it's always interesting. So it's like, yeah, whenever I go in with a plan, it's never 100%
Yeah.
what I'm expecting. And even with all the questions that I have, I try to get like the most pressing questions that I can. If we're pressed for time, I always try to get the most pressing questions like out there.
Right.
So it's like if there's something mysterious that I've wanted to know for a long time, we can just get that out of the way first, and then all that fluff about it's like, oh yeah, how did you feel about this character in Yu-Gi-Oh? It's like okay, that's not as important as what I really want to ask right here and now.
Right. Definitely. And it's I think ultimately when the guest brings up something that you didn't have written down, it means that the guest is typically more interested in what they bring up than what you originally had. So if the guest is more interested, then it's probably going to be a more interesting show typically, right? So
Oh
I
yeah.
always just listen for like little tidbits and try to jump off that. But sometimes it's like, oh man, I there's a lot of good questions here like I didn't get around to. But maybe that's why it's always a part 2 might be possible in the future, right?
Absolutely.
But one similar thing was when I talked to N Freak, or Naveed as he goes by now. He briefly mentioned just photography, and it turns out that we were both incredibly interested in photography. So we went on a whole tangent just talking about manual versus auto, and just capturing a moment in time and stuff. So there's always just those fun little tidbits where it's like, oh, I'm way glad. Like you can't always prepare for a more interesting topic than what you originally prepared anyway. So when it comes up, it's always great, basically. But I don't mean to stay on interviewing specifically. Whenever, obviously, I have a little bit of a bias because I'm really interested in interviewing. But of course, interviewing people is just one part of many things that you do. Another thing that you do a lot is game reviewing, or kind of game analytical discussion. And this is kind of a common question I like to ask, but just which part of making a game review, or like top 10 or something like that, which aspect of that do you enjoy doing the most? Like, do you find you are very attached to reading out the script, writing the script, editing, playing the games? Like, what do you think piques your interest the most with those videos?
Let's see, because again, there's a lot of factors to it, but I'd say one of my favorite bits is getting to play the game and then just blurting out my thoughts in just like a Google document, and just writing what I'm thinking about the game at the
Right.
time. And yeah, I always get a rush just from doing that. It's just like, oh man, I want to bring up this, and then I'll just write out just a bunch of stuff, and then I'll format it later. But that's always my favorite part. My least favorite part is probably just the audio editing, but the voiceover is also, it's good. I love doing voiceover, but I always have to like pump myself up to do it, because
Right.
it's like, okay, this is gonna take a while, and I have to cut out some stuff, and I have to do retakes and all that. But yeah, I would say my favorite part is just recording the game, playing the game, and then just writing my thoughts on it, because I can do that whenever. It's really relaxing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like just a direct response kind of thing, where, because like I do you ever feel that when you're playing a game and you're not like writing a review on it, do you ever find that like, oh, I got to get my thoughts out on this somehow, like do you feel like almost an urge after you play a game to like, I gotta tell somebody about this, right? Like
Yeah.
and that might be why that initial rough drafting is so satisfying, because it's just a release of like thoughts and exercises that you made in your head, and then you're like, okay, even if this script never turns into anything, at least that was fun.
Yeah.
And what about like editing though? Because you also you consider yourself like an editor, right? That's another thing that you do as a profession.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of editing for Digino Gaming still, even after I haven't been doing narration for a while. I've still been doing the editing for a lot of videos, not all of them, but I got a playlist where it's like, yeah, I did this and I did that.
Right.
But
and
yeah.
do you enjoy that, or is that mostly just work to you?
No, editing is a lot of fun for me. Let's see, because when it comes to like putting everything together and writing everything and then seeing it all come together as like a finished product, especially when music is backing it, it's like, okay, this sounds a lot better than what I thought it was. Like, because when I write a script and then I do the voiceover, sometimes I worry a bit too much where I think it's like, is this disjointed? Is
Right.
what I'm making makes sense? Is this gonna flow okay? But then when you put music behind it and then there's footage and everything, it's like, okay, this comes out a lot better. And I always get surprised when I see that. And even when it's for work that I don't have as much of an attachment to, I always try to add my own little personal spin on it, where it's like, ooh, I like this music. Like for the canceled Game Boy Advance video, like again, that one was I put a lot of myself into that one, but
Sure.
I was like, I really like a lot of music from Rareware games on Game Boy Advance, so there's gonna be a lot of that in the background, and then people are like, "What is this music from? I've never heard it from somewhere." Oh, it's like, "Oh, that's from Saberwolf on the GBA. You're welcome," and that's what I like to do.
What a powerful trend start. Whoever first started adding video game music to the background of videos, because that ended up being such a treasure for so long. You know.
Oh yeah.
Great way of not only discovering new tracks, but also just when you hear like a niche track that you feel like only you would hear inside that video, and you're like, I know that track. I was watching Stop Skeletons from Fighting the other day, in which he included a random song, not only from Time Splitters 2, but also a retro arcade game that was in Time Splitters 2 called Anaconda. And I hear it and I'm like, I know that. My friends and I played that all the time growing up. And it's just something, it adds just this whole new level of interest to the video. And as you were saying, when you're in the video editing process, it is just everything coming together. It's a culmination of so many different art forms that form into one singular cohesive piece. And I feel like there's few things more satisfying than that, you know?
Yeah, and there was like to go off of like that music thing, when we were talking about like a licensed game in that video, and I was like, it's a really good licensed music that people don't know about, so I took a track from Robots on the Game Boy Advance from the Robots movie, you know, that one from like Blue Sky.
Right.
And it's got really good music, and I didn't hear it until I was making that video, and then I see a comment and they say like at 30 minutes and 22 seconds, Robots on GBA, let's go.
Yeah, it always resonates with someone. There's always at least one person who like catches it and like, oh, I know this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what makes it all
happy.
worth it, right? I mean, for all we know, that
yeah.
track might be better than the entire movie, so that's pretty cool. I
Robots
say that
is all right,
on
but
very
yeah.
okay. Yeah, I should say I've not seen it in forever. I shouldn't be too harsh. But yeah, no. So in general, like, if you had to break down your art in your video game review specifically, would you say your art is that conception, that coming up with why you feel attached to this game or disattached to a game? Like, is that the making of art for you, basically? Or do you think only when it's all together do you really kind of see it as your creation?
So let's see. That's a very interesting question, because like when I make a video on something, I always try to make it unique to me. Like when I made my SpongeBob Rehydrated review, I knew there were going to be like a million reviews of that, and I wasn't even going into the game planning to make a review on it, but I felt so strongly about what I played that I felt I just had to get something out, especially since other people were not bringing up the problems that were plaguing my experience. Or when I did a video on Blast Core, I was like, nobody talks about Blast Core, and I played the game a year before I made the video, and even a year later, I still felt passionate about talking about Blast Core, so I was like, I'm gonna make a video on this right now. It's probably not gonna get a lot of views, and it's not the hottest like rare game ever, but it's still awesome, and no one else seems to be chatting about it right now, so I'm gonna do something, and I really have to let other people know what this game is about.
Heard some guests say that like once their idea is made, they want it out of their head. Like that's considered the art to them, and they're like whatever editing funnel that goes into, then that's fine. It's just I've already did my part as a creator in kind of coming up with that conception, right? Because basically some people like near Chris specifically, he didn't even want to edit his videos anymore because he was like, I'm tired of hearing my own thoughts over and over again when I've already kind of moved on from it. You know, that my articulation was already done. And I didn't know if like for you, if when your full thing is actually created, if that's when it's like, okay, now I've created something, or if you feel like the whole process is just, you know, a nebula of like, I created this and this and this and this or whatnot. Like, so yeah, from what I understand though, it comes from an urge of just wanting to express something on a game, and ultimately the combining everything and showing it to the world, that's when it's officially created. Is that kind of your take on it?
Yeah, because like what you said about near Chris and editing, there may have been like a hot minute where I thought, do I still want to edit my videos? And then I was like, yes, I do, because this is just my baby, and
Right.
it's just my personal thing. I'm sure someone else could do a much better job in terms of like this area or that area, but this is my thing, and I really want it to be my own thing, even if
Right.
a video takes months to come out, or there's a bit of dead air between videos. I want to make sure that this is my thing, and I just it's my creation, and I just want to see it through to the end in every
Right.
facet possible.
Well, that's a very good answer, and I'm glad, because I feel like I was getting the question far too confusing than it needed to be. So I'm glad you had a really good answer for that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, we're gonna start moving on to some questions that I kind of tend to ask every guest around the end, which is just who was your inspirations when you were going into this field of video making, and what aspects of their work did you take inspiration from to incorporate into your own? What's your general thoughts on that?
So a lot of my earliest inspirations when it came to video making specifically were, let's see, I want to say like Screw Attack and guys like JonTron and The Completionist, because they were all doing stuff where, yeah, they were basically just talking about video games. Some guys were just doing it from the luxury of their own home. They were just like regular average Joes. They weren't these big celebrities, but everybody knew who they were, and they were getting big numbers. And I was like, I could do that. I really want to talk about this game and this game here in my own way. And it took a while before I think I finally managed to be like totally me, because I took a lot of inspiration from those guys and like how I formatted things and general speech and editing and things like that. But yeah, those were just two of like my many. Those are just the two that are coming to the top of my head. But yeah, I took heavy inspiration from those guys.
Right. And you feel that by now you've really found your own style, though? Like, do you feel less restricted to your previous inspirations?
Yes, I would say so. Just because, I mean, I'm still doing the thing where it's just some guy in his room just talking about how much he likes this game, or talking about how much he dislikes this, or what have you. But I feel a lot more comfortable in just being who I am, just
Sure.
letting out just all my thoughts. And if like just like how you, to bring it back to the whole narration thing, like I don't care if I get loud or quiet, a little quiet, or I fluctuate in my tone, but this is all me, and I just love it, and I'm totally comfortable with it.
Right. Yeah, well, and that's good. I think it's super important to even though when you're starting out, it might be a good idea to learn from those around you. You know, eventually you want to take what you can to build your own kind of style and forefront, and to remind yourself that a format of a video is just that. It's just a format. It doesn't have to carry on the thoughts of other people. It just has to carry on your own thoughts, and that's the closest thing to a unique idea that you're going to get nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I'm glad that you feel that you've kind of found your own style. And I guess another question I kind of asked that's kind of similar to it is just in general, do you think there's something that is most important to you when it comes to creating? Is there some kind of purpose that you hold on to over the years of like, if anything happens, at least this happens, or whether that's just the act of creating itself, scratching that creative itch, you're like, I need to scratch that regardless if anyone sees, or is there something kind of bigger, a bigger purpose that you hold on to? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
It's a really heavy question. I'm just trying to find a really heavy answer to it, but
I mean, you could take it any direction you want. If it's as simple as I am selfish and I want to create something and that's it, and I will do whatever I can. I mean, that's not selfish, but you know, whatever answer you feel is most honest, basically.
well, the reason I make videos is because, well, one, I enjoy making the stuff that I do. Other people seem to enjoy it, even for depending on, I mean, there's ebbs and flows with how many people see my stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm like, it kind of sounds selfish to say I'm making it for me, but it's like, I want to make this video about this thing that I really like, and I hope other people enjoy the stuff that I talk about. And being on YouTube and making the videos that I do is a great avenue for me to just ramble on about, here's my memories of this, or here's what I love about this, and I try to incorporate as much of my life and experiences into just my videos, where I'll just talk about an old story that happened when I was a kid. Or yeah, creating stuff has just given me just a great outlet to just hit like, hey, here's who I am, and this is what I do. Any questions? Of course, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but this is me.
Any questions? I like that. Yeah. This is me. Any questions? Well, yeah, I think I think that's always a good outlet, though, is to see it as a sense of presenting yourself, as opposed to obviously trying to reach ranks or increase numbers or whatnot. Having just that personal, that the having yourself drive the ship, basically your personality drive the ship, and your need to express yourself. That's always seems like a good foundation for any kind of creative outlet, including YouTube, right?
Yeah, and I do it just because I can't imagine doing anything else at the time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and it's always it really is hard to find something that's similar to YouTube that is so accessible when it comes to being able to just share your personality online, right? The mix of video, audio, and even like concepts and community that all is facilitated from YouTube. That's not something to be taken lightly, right? As much as we want to bash on YouTube sometimes, there is something really special about that. So I guess a kind of a caveat question to ask for that then is, if you weren't doing YouTube stuff, what kind of creating do you think you would do? Like, what else would kind of scratch that itch, basically? What would be your second option, basically?
Let's see, because I've thought about this for a while, but I would obviously still be doing a lot of my artwork, still be drawing. Maybe I do like performing on stage or something, but yeah, when I do stuff online, it just I'm a bit more comfortable with that. I mean, I used to do plays in like high school and things like that, but yeah, again, with the whole not showing my face thing, it's given me so much more freedom to do song covers and other things like that. But yeah, if YouTube wasn't here, I'd still be finding ways to get creative, but I'd probably have to be a lot less lazy about it.
For sure. Yeah, it would definitely be an adjustment no matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
All right, well, we are just about out of time here, but I do want to ask one more question, which is a question I've been asking a lot of people, which is, how have you been creatively dealing with everything that's been going on in 2020? I don't mean to pry into anything personal, but on a creative level, have you found that it has inspired you to create more over the last year, or has it been a little bit too daunting to the point where you're creating less? Like, what kind of effect has everything in 2020 had on you, basically?
Well, aside from my work output with Did You Know Gaming becoming like more and more frequent as of the pandemic, which is crazy, things have pretty much been the same for me, where like I've never brought up like the topic in my videos. It's just like it's sort of just like an escape for people, and just like, yeah, things are just going along as they are, and yeah, it really hasn't affected me in any way. If anything, it just makes me want to do more stuff and just
right.
Yeah, just get as much done as I can. So yeah, nothing's really changed much on my end with the pandemic, but I do feel like my stuff has gotten even better with time.
Right. Right, which might have been might not be the source of 2020. It might have just been that natural time progression. But what about on the consumer end? Have you found that you've been looking for more escapism, or have you been watching less media because you're more focused on working on your own stuff? Has there been any change in that particularly?
Let's see. When it comes to media, I'm always consuming stuff, but maybe when it comes to just online and just when it comes to social medias and social media outlets, I don't use Instagram or TikTok or anything like that, and I barely use Twitter outside of business or just looking at stuff, because I feel like I peaked in 2015 with that stuff. After 2015, I was like, okay, I'm tired of seeing all these people talk about politics and all these things like that. I just have to stay away from all this. I'm in the prime age when I should be all over social media and things like that, but I feel like I'm a retired old man when it's just no, I don't even want to look at what's going on. I just want to check my email. If someone got a notification, or it's oh, hey, a work opportunity, or someone reached out to say thank you on my Gmail account. That's basically, with age and time, it's just no, I don't have time for this.
Right.
I don't want to invest time into just being angry at things that I can't control.
Yeah, and it's very much requires you to invest time, even just to have the slightest involvement in social media. They will find a way to double that involvement that you originally wanted, no matter what. Every time I check the site just to send out one tweet, I find it will be at least 5 minutes before I actually send the tweet, because I get lost in whatever news is shoved into my face, right? And fans of the show will know I'm not shy of dumping on Twitter quite a bit. But I think my ultimate goal is, if I can ever get to a spot creatively where I don't need social media networking specifically, then I know I've made it. When I can ditch Twitter and not have it affect whatever growth that my channel might have, then I think that'll be a good day. I think I'll be more creatively happy that day. But for now, I try to do similar to you. I just try to only use it for work, and occasionally messaging other creators, because some creators only like to message on Twitter for some reason. I don't know why, but that's what they do. But yeah, no, I applaud you in your efforts of trying to slim down on it, as I hope to do one day, despite my hypocrisy and crippling addiction. But to not end it on an unhappy note, I'm glad that you're still finding yourself healthy, even with everything going on over the last year. And obviously, your work is just continuing to improve, and I don't imagine that's going to fall short anytime soon in the future.
I hope not.
Good job on that. And with that, I think we're just about done with this podcast. So if you would like to kind of let everyone know where they can find you, what kind of stuff you're working on, maybe not so much in a timely manner, because who knows when this is coming out, but just in general, where can people find you and your work?
Well, you can find me at The Cartoon Gamer. I go by The Cartoon Gamer on YouTube. I got a Facebook page. I got a Twitter page as well. And just look for the Smiling Pikachu. And I'm working on, well, like you said, this is going to be a while before it comes out in full, but I'm always working on something. I'm probably working on a Did You Know Gaming right now. I'll just say that, because by the time this comes out, I'll probably still be doing that. And I'll probably be working on some other videos of my own, and a bunch of other creative outlets. You'll probably see some of my drawings on Twitter as well. So I hope you like what you see. I try to keep everything nice and inviting, family friendly, and I hope you enjoy if you choose to follow me.
I'm quite certain everybody who chooses to follow you will enjoy it, and I appreciate you very much for taking time out of your day to be here on the podcast. It's very much appreciative. And I'm also appreciative to all you out there watching and supporting. Thank you so much for watching and supporting. If you guys would like to check out these podcasts, we now have them on Apple and Spotify and every other podcasting app, and you can find a link to that in the description. And of course, if you'd ever like to see anything that we were talking about in a more condensed form, these will be uploaded into highlights on my YouTube channel, which you can find in the description as well. And with that, I will see you guys in the next podcast episode. So long.
Bye.